Welcome back, fellow jazz bums. Today, it's a video that's been in the making. I've been thinking about for quite some time. It's about a label based in Spain that has been doing really great reissues, new discovery, archivals, and I've been buying the records for quite some time. And it's Elemental Records. It's a record label based in Spain, specialized in archival jazz, classical, but most important, Brazilian reissues. I think was a good hook for us today. We got so many requests about talking more about Brazilian music in general, tropicalia, bossa nova, samba, and so many other rhythms that are so sought after, so hard to find, even back home. So I thought today was a great opportunity to go a little bit more about the label and talk about their most newly releases specifically. But first, don't forget to like and subscribe. So let's say about, 6 years ago, 7 maybe, I was at my local record shop back in Tampa. Shout out to Audio Exchange. She owner Ron, and especially Erin, his daughter. They're really passionate about Brazilian music, so they carry a good selection. And I came across this record here, Vinicius and Odete Lara. It's on the Elenco label. Elenco, for the ones who collect Brazilian music, is really well known. It's probably the label for getting the best bossa nova releases. And these are really sought after and hard to find. The beautiful thing about this label is because of lack of funds, they would restrict themselves to using paper sleeves and only 3 colors to make it cheaper. And those covers became iconic. That I would say there's a book much in need to be done just with this artwork because it's great. And this was the very first release on the label, late, very early 60s. So, and I went back home, I played it, and I wasn't aware of the label yet. And here's the label. Really good reproduction. And the sound was really special, fantastic to me. I thought it was really well done. Then I went to the website. I started checking a little more. But, you're starting to get into vinyl more like outside of the US. There's so much talk about European labels. You have to know how to separate the good from the not so good. And, of course, they have been delivering. So they also, Record Store Day, right? Everybody knows the Record Store Day titles like this one, the Bill Evans series, for example. And they also release really killer jazz titles, like this one here, Down and Up, or Sparlin. One of my favorites, if not my favorite pianist. So they do a really good job with packaging and the sound. Then I started looking a little further. They have been around since 2012. It's a partnership between Zeb Feldman and Jordi Soleil in Spain. And their thing is to unearth, to find archival things, new titles, hard to find titles. They license from the labels and make them available at a high quality. They try to make it, new liner notes when available, nice booklets, good packaging, more like on the collectible mindset. So I think it's been really good. So I reached out to them. I spoke with Ahome in Spain. I was really interested in checking the latest releases because these records, I actually have the originals, and I was like, okay, so let's check out the reissues. And I contact them. They very kindly sent me 2 copies of the 2 latest Brazilian music releases. And again, disclaimer, I reached out and requested because I wanted to review and compare to my originals. And second, not only a stack against my originals, but see the quality of the work, everything. So I think they have been doing a really outstanding job. So we talked about it. They sent me 2 copies, which I'm going to review now. Talk about a little bit of the background, which I think is even more important than just saying sounds amazing or the jacket is thick or something like this. So the first release, as you guys always see, is an artist called Todos. It's called Todos os Olhos, which means all eyes. Very controversial cover, which of course I'm going to go over, but I'm also going to go over some of his bio, his importance in Brazilian music. So Todos from the start. He's one of the most important, influential artists in Brazilian music from the early 60s to this day. He was born in a poor town in the state of Bahia in 1936. And Bahia is a state in the northeast of Brazil, which is very popular for Carnival. Some of the most important musicians in history in Brazil came from there, like Caetano Veloso, Gal Costa, Gilberto Gil, Dorival Caymmi, among others. It has a very rich musical environment. It was influenced not only by styles such African music because of the slaves. That was the state where the Portuguese first arrived in Brazil. So that was the very first start of everything was there. So African music, that's regional native rhythms from the Indians that lived there, but also Europeans, because that's where the first settlers came. And to this day, it remains one of the most musical states in the country and a cradle for new artists. Tom Zé, oddly enough, he comes from a rich family. They had a lottery ticket won early in his life. So as a teenager, he starts to study acoustic guitar. He goes to talent shows on TV, and then finally he goes to the Federal University in Bahia to study music. In the 60s, he joins, it's all like a melting pot there. So he ends up joining Caetano, Gilberto Gil, Gal Costa, Maria Bethânia for a show called Nós, which means we, in Salvador. This group later goes to São Paulo, and they start the whole Tropicalia, and they record the record Tropicalia or Panis et Circenses in 1968. A note on this movement. Tropicalia is probably one of the most influential and important movements in Brazil, although it didn't last for that long. It was a very short period of time, but was very productive, prolific, and I think it has a mark to this day. So many things branched out from there. It was like a moment in time, but there was so many things branched from there, which makes its importance so deep to the day. So it's an artistic movement of the late 60s where popular, avant-garde, national, foreign music styles, not only music, but also film, theater, photography. It was a big merge into Brazilian and African rhythms with the British and American psychedelia and pop rock. Keep in mind, it was the 60s. Everything was pretty much acoustic guitar to the late 60s. And the introduction of electric instruments was a big hurdle, was a big debate, was kind of a fight there. And they were very innovative, very pushing forward, doing all sorts of merging there. So these musicians from Bahia, notably Caetano Veloso, Gilberto Gil, and Tom Zé, Gal Costa, this group moved from Salvador. They went to São Paulo, where they met to collaborate with the Mutantes, the famous Mutantes, and Rogério Duprat, which was a conductor and arranger. And he's one of the main responsible for the sound that this record, Tropicalia or Panis et Circenses, has. So this record became like the group's manifesto, like their aesthetic, their new aesthetic guys. They were trying to push their new aesthetic in sound, in poetry, in music, in painting, everything. So that was a movement that was really, really boiling at the moment. And this record was quite important because it was experimenting with unorthodox song structures, tradition with innovation, acceptance, not right-wing or left-wing. David Byrne and Beck are some notorious examples of artists. They're heavily influenced by the sounds of tropicalism. And about inclusion, acceptance, remember, Brazil in between 68 and 74 were the worst moments in our dictatorship. People are being killed, arrested just because of the books they read or, whatever. The type of courses they would take in college, kids, they would just be picked up and disappear. So, and there was this big divide into society. So their movement tried to be very inclusive, not taking sides that much, but it was something that became unavoidable because of the whole historical moment there. And the dominant principle of this movement was what we call anthropophagy. It's like, it came from the modernism earlier in the century, but pretty much it means that we're going to cannibalize, eat, digest, get everything that we can, make into something new, and also concrete art. So everything is very, at the same time, it's a mixture, it's a hodgepodge of things going on, but presented in a very concrete way, very simple, direct way. That's the presentation. However, it did not last long because it was a big group of artists. They end up like branching out in different directions, different musical styles, different poetic styles. And Tom also disconnected with the movement. Many of those members, remember, they self-exile, they tried different styles, they went deeper into experimental, they were more political, they went acoustic again. So Tom, he was more like cynical about it. His thing was more experimenting with sounds. He was not someone that was just a musician itself. He's big time poet. So his thing was about writing and making sounds, making words that would fit sounds, make sounds that would fit words, and try to make this big game of words and sounds, which is very peculiar to his work. So in the late 80s, he was in a down moment in his life. He meets David Byrne, who releases all his catalog in the US. That's when Luacabop was sort of starting label. And that caused a researcher's interest back in Brazil and here. He regains popularity. He starts recording again. A lot of his work starts being revisited by Brazilian and foreign artists. As I mentioned, like people like Beck, David Byrne, they are really high influenced by Tom Zé and many more like avant-garde contemporary musicians as well. He becomes the subject of documentaries. He writes music even for ballets. In 2002, he's inducted into São Paulo State Academy of Letters for his work as a writer. So, now coming to the record, Todos os Olhos. Why this cover? Why the title? What does it mean? So first off, it's one of the most emblematic and essential records of this period, this confrontational music in Brazil. So Tom has always been very cryptic about the cover. He never like explained very clearly. And there's an interview with his photographer and his manager. They go a little more in detail about it. So they wanted to do something unusual, provocative. They had a marble, so they wanted to, use the marble somewhere in an orifice. They went searching on the street, right? Some ladies working on the street, and they got the marbles. They tried in the mouth, they tried in their anuses, but to obtain this more dubious, questionable, what is this kind of effect? They end up using a mouth, these lips, okay? So you can see as an anus as well, or you can see as an eye, depending on how you see it. It could be many ways. The idea behind it is to make it dubious, for sure. So Todos os Olhos means all eyes, all the eyes. Remember, in a dictatorship, you're always being watched. There's always someone looking at you, so what you're doing, what you're thinking, and if you risk, eliminate. So, but at the same time, those people tend to be very, very dumb, not so smart, because they're just chasing stereotypes. They're not being very analytical or thinking much of what we're doing. So this all eyes, they refer to this constant state of vigilance, but also comparing to an anus also exposes the ridicule of the government itself as a fake, a self-parody. So what comes out of an anus, right? That's it. So he was trying to make ridicule of the government as well. He was also denouncing, criticizing, and mocking this trend of heroes who made protest music at the time. He signed his eremitic letter of exclusion, but not without the contestation. He excommunicated from the traditional, the pantheon of the great Brazilian musicians. He was kind of put aside. He was in a limbo. So that's why this record comes from. He came from Bahia, but his poetry is very wry, urban, infused with the uncomfortable sounds of a big city. So everything is sort of chaotic, neurotic. It's pure São Paulo. It's a pure metropole. If you're used to being in a big city, that's what he tries to bring poetry, show the beautiful sides of it, but also show this chaotic, neurotic, nervous, oppressive, but the little things of beauty there. And the little aspects of everyday life and how we perhaps over exaggerate some aspects and we neglect others, right? So but it's full of poetry. Tracks like Cademar, like Complexo de Édipo, they were included in a comp that you can find by Lockabop. Otherwise, you have to get from this record here. This reissue has many unseen photos, has new testimonials from Tom Zé himself. There's a nice article signed by Bento Araújo. By Bento Araújo, author one of the book series called Lindo Sonho Delirante, about the movement and about Tom Zé as well. So one of the most important songs here that's used, has a very hypnotic rhythm. It's used to start and to finish the record, is called Complexo de Épico, which means Epic's Complex, which is a game of word with Oedipus complex, about the Greek mythology. This song itself has this hypnotic rhythm that keeps coming back and forth. It was a tape loop. He made the arrangement and put it in a tape loop, and he started improvising over that. And then he said, record what I sing before I forget. So he started singing the words. So the song pretty much says that every Brazilian composer is complex. Why be so serious? Take yourself so serious. Play so seriously. Kiss so serious. That's what the lyrics are talking about. And because of the time dictatorship, when you wanted to be free of problems, you had to appear to be a serious person. So in the songs, it says that you can be serious like this in hell. Pretty much. That's his idea. Try to be serious, dude, go there. In real life, don't be so serious. It's not such a great thing. It doesn't look good for you. It is a musical and literary work where sounds or words, they combine with instruments to create a background for a challenging landscape, criticize the dictatorship and criticize the opposition as well for being not so receptive to different perspectives. He's protesting the protest. That's the whole idea behind it. That's everything is so scandalous. That's why everything is so weird. He was just, showing the ridicule of both sides to everybody. So this new reissue by Elemento has a great package, has some edit notes by Tom himself in a great gatefold cover, which I show. Records came in polyline sleeves. They did also a great job here reproducing the original label on Continental. And for the non-initiated, this is a great gateway not only to Brazilian music, post-Tropicalia movement, but the sound and the brain of this artist that's so unorthodox, who writes with sounds and he plays with words. Elemento did a great job here, remastering, cutting this record. The sounds have a really nice stereo image. His voice comes across really well, and I think sound quality-wise, it's like an original record, if not better, because it sounds cleaner, it sounds better separated. It's terrific job there, and I hope they keep doing some more records like this. They're hard to get, really sought after, and are very emblematic of a time period and a culture. Next, we have another release that came. This one does not came in a gatefolder. This one is by Osmar Milito. This is called Viagem, which means trip. Just a little background. Osmar Milito, he was born in 1941. He's still alive. He's a musician, pianist, composer, and considered to be one of the greatest jazz and bossa pianists of all time. His brother, Elcio, he was a member of the Tamba Trio, one of the most important trios, bossa nova, who played in the U.S. quite often. He played for Tamba till 1964, then he moved to the U.S. and had a very important career in jazz. He played with João and Astrud, Gilberto, Stan Getz, Luis Bonfá, Gil Evans, Don Costa, Tom Bennett, Wes Montgomery, among others. Going back to Milito, who is the subject of the recording here, he started in 1964, playing for Silvio Teles, Nara Leão, Maria Bethânia, Gilberto Gil, and many others in Brazil. After a presentation to Mexico and the U.S., he stayed in the 70s, until the early 70s in the U.S. He was playing with Sergio Mendes in Vegas University. They were pretty much touring together for quite some time. Elcio then returns to Brazil in the early 70s. He plays with many of the greatest artists in popular music back in the day. In 1961, he released his first record worldwide. In 1970, it's called Let the Clock Move, Deixa o Relógio Andar. He remained very active through the years, playing in recordings and concerts with artists all over the world, like Liza Minnelli, Sarah Vaughan, Tony Bennett, Sammy Davis Jr., Pat Metheny, Shelley Manne, Randy Becker, Spanky Wilson, Mark Murphy, and Benny Golson. He wrote soundtracks, he invested in music clubs in Brazil, and still remains active. 1974 was the year of this record, Viagem. It's considered to be his best, his masterpiece, his greatest achievement. It contains perhaps the most inspired recordings of his solo career, from Up and Away by the Fifth Dimension to the Jobim classic Bonita, Jorge Ben, Que Maravilha, and traditional Brazilian folk songs. He's able to bring such diverse compositions and dress them with his classic sound signature without removing them from their respective original universes. It would be simplistic to call it jazz fusion or orchestral. It brings the spirit of the best in Brazilian arrangements with a universal musical appeal, making accessible, but at the same time has a very complex and sophisticated build. It was released also on the Continental label, which a little later had a different face. This record is an important example of traditional stepping forward with no timestamp. It's still fresh and relevant. It's an important addition to any collection of Brazilian music. This one by Osmar Milito. Elemental release reinforces this quality of the musical aspect. A great stage, clarity of instruments, is an orchestra record, so embraces a very delicate profusion of sounds. Nothing is overwhelming. It's very soft sounding, very embracing. My record came really good, no problem. A really good reproduction of the image. I like black and white. I think great job here on this black and white. I'm quite happy with it. And the last final release has been in Brazil in '94. So it was high time a record like this got reissued and a proper and readily available. And these were really records that really surprised me the way they came presented. And not surprising is the quality that Elemental has been putting on these records. If you find this one, buy it because it's killer. It is really good. And I hope they keep putting more. There's just so much more Brazilian music that remains to be, I wouldn't even say discovered, but available. There's a lot of CD, mostly CD in Japan, some European, but mostly this is the way that you can find abroad. Even back home, those records are extremely rare to find in good condition. So I think Elemental is presenting a great opportunity there for us to have access to this precious documents of perhaps the most prolific and rich period in Brazilian culture, which is music from late 50s to the late 70s, and just great job. And I have to thank Homie for helping me with the records. And these are the first two I got from them as a review copy. I have tons of those. I bought many. I try to be honest and true here. If I don't think it's worth mentioning something, I'm not even waste my time, your time, because it doesn't make any sense. It was a good opportunity for us to talk a little bit about the history of these artists and explain why they're important and why such releases are worth checking if you're interested in Brazilian music, or just stepping outside US and UK for a change. I think it's really nice and eye-opening to see that there's great stuff all over the world. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next.